The first scream came from the kettle, shrill and sudden, cutting through the bright quiet of a late morning kitchen, and it felt like a warning rather than a sound, as if the day itself was about to split open and reveal something no one was ready to face. Outside, sunlight spilled across the street, children rode bicycles, and the world looked ordinary, but inside that small rented house, a single father named R. Cole felt the weight of years pressed down on his chest all at once, heavy and breathless, as though life had been waiting for the exact moment he let his guard down to remind him how fragile everything really was. If you believe that kindness deserves second chances and that even the most broken moments can lead to unexpected healing, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Acts of Heart, because stories like this exist to remind us why compassion still matters. Arav had not planned for life to turn out this way. He had once imagined mornings filled with shared laughter, 2 cups of coffee on the counter, and a partner who would help carry the weight of the world. Instead, it was just him and his 8-year-old daughter, Mira, navigating a routine built on quiet resilience. Daytime was when Arav felt strongest, when sunlight gave him the illusion that he could manage everything. He worked nights as a hospital janitor, slept in short bursts, and spent his mornings making sure Myra's lunch was packed neatly, her hair brushed just right, and her shoes tied tight enough to keep her from tripping over the cracks in the sidewalk. He did all this with a tenderness that came from guilt as much as love, because Myra's mother had died in an accident that Arav still replayed in his mind, over and over, as if searching for a version where he could have stopped it. The house was modest, filled with second-hand furniture and walls painted in hopeful colors that never quite hid the wear beneath. Myra's drawings were taped everywhere, bright suns, crooked houses, and smiling figures holding hands, each one a quiet prayer for wholeness. Arav often paused to look at them, wondering how a child who had lost so much could still believe so fiercely in happiness. He worried constantly about failing her, about the nights he came home too tired to smile, about the mornings when his patience wore thin. Still, Mira never complained. She watched him with eyes far older than her years, as if she understood that love sometimes looked like exhaustion. That particular day had begun like any other. The sky was clear, the light warm and forgiving. Arav had just finished washing the dishes when a knock echoed through the house. It was hesitant, uneven, the kind of knock that carried uncertainty with it. When he opened the door, he saw a woman standing on the porch, frozen in place as if unsure whether she was allowed to exist in the daylight. Her name, he would later learn, was Alara Finch. Her hair was uneven, her clothes worn thin, and her skin bore the faint, uneven scars of old burns that crept up her arms and neck, marks that spoke of a past she could not outrun. She smelled faintly of smoke and antiseptic, and her eyes were a storm of fear and determination. Alara had come to the wrong house, or so she said at first, her voice barely audible, her gaze fixed somewhere just beyond Arav's shoulder. But something in her posture, the way she trembled despite the warmth of the day, made him pause. Arav was used to seeing broken people at the hospital, patients and visitors alike, all carrying their own invisible fires. He knew that look. It was the look of someone who had been burned not just by flames, but by life itself. He offered her water and a place to sit, not because he understood her story, but because kindness had become his quiet rebellion against a world that had taken too much from him already. Alara sat stiffly at the edge of the couch, hands clasped together as if holding herself in one piece. The daylight streaming through the window revealed more of her scars, pale and uneven, mapping a history of pain she had learned to hide. She spoke slowly, haltingly, explaining that a fire years ago had taken everything from her, her home, her family, and her sense of worth. People looked at her differently now, she said, as if the burns had erased who she used to be. She had been drifting, surviving on temporary shelters and fleeting jobs, carrying shame like a second skin. That morning, she had walked for hours, drawn to the quiet street by something she could not explain, until her courage finally ran out at Arav's door. Mira had been watching from the hallway, her small frame half hidden behind the wall. Arav noticed her there, noticed the way her eyes softened as they rested on Alara. Children saw things adults often missed, the truth beneath the surface. Mira stepped forward slowly, the floor creaking under her careful steps. Alara looked up then, startled, and for a moment, fear flashed across her face, as if she expected rejection from even a child. What happened next was simple, almost insignificant to an outside observer, but it would change all of their lives. Mira walked up to Alara and placed her small hand over the woman's scarred one. Her touch was gentle, deliberate, unafraid. She looked at Alara with complete sincerity and said 3 words, softly, without hesitation, words that did not judge or question, words that simply existed as truth. Those words were not dramatic or poetic, but they landed with the force of a lifetime. Alara's breath caught, and the walls she had built so carefully around her heart crumbled in an instant. Alara broke down then, not loudly, not with wailing sobs, but with a quiet unraveling that felt even more devastating. Tears slipped down her face as she bowed her head, her shoulders shaking as years of suppressed pain finally found release. Arav stood frozen, unsure of what to do, until instinct took over and he knelt beside them, his hand hovering awkwardly before resting on Alara's back. The room was filled with sunlight and silence, and in that moment, it felt as though time itself had slowed to bear witness to something sacred. Over the next few hours, Alara's story unfolded in fragments, shared between long pauses and deep breaths. She spoke of the fire, of waking up in a hospital bed wrapped in bandages, of the mirror she avoided for months, of friends who stopped calling, of strangers who stared. She spoke of the loneliness that followed her everywhere, heavier than any physical pain. Arav listened, really listened, the way he wished someone had listened to him after his wife's death. He did not try to fix her or offer hollow reassurances. He simply let her exist in the space they shared. Mira sat nearby, drawing quietly, occasionally glancing up to offer a shy smile. The house, which had once felt too empty, now felt strangely full. As the afternoon wore on, something shifted, subtle but undeniable. Alara's posture softened, her eyes lifted more often. The weight she carried did not disappear, but it seemed lighter, as if shared burdens were easier to bear. In the days that followed, Alara returned, first hesitantly, then with growing confidence. She helped Mira with her homework, cooked simple meals, and slowly allowed herself to be seen in the daylight without flinching. Arav watched all this with cautious hope, afraid to name the feeling blooming in his chest. He saw how Mira laughed more freely, how Alara's hands grew steadier, how the scars that once defined her faded into the background, no longer the first thing anyone noticed. Arav faced his own struggles during this time. Allowing someone new into his carefully controlled world meant risking loss again. He wrestled with guilt, with fear, with the question of whether he deserved happiness. But every time he saw Mira resting her head against Alara's side, every time he caught Alara smiling at something small and ordinary, he felt a quiet reassurance settle in his bones. Healing, he realized, was not a single moment, but a series of choices, made daily, often without certainty. The turning point came on a bright afternoon when Alara accompanied Arav and Mira to the park. Children played under the open sky, laughter echoing across the grass. Alara hesitated at the edge, her scars visible in the sunlight, her fear resurfacing. Mira reached for her hand again, the same gentle certainty in her touch. Alara took a deep breath and stepped forward, allowing herself to exist fully in the open, unhidden and unashamed. Arav felt tears prick his eyes as he watched her stand taller, stronger, not because the world had changed, but because she had. As the sun began to dip, casting golden light over everything, Arav understood that life had given him something unexpected, not a replacement for what he had lost, but a new beginning shaped by compassion and courage. Alara was not fixed, and neither was he, but together, they were learning how to live with their scars, how to let love seep into the cracks. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to engage with the video, because every like, comment, and share helps stories of kindness reach someone who might need them today. Before the ending, here is a special request. Please comment the word hope if you believe that even the most broken souls can find healing through compassion. As evening settled in and the world quieted, Arav tucked Mira into bed, her eyes heavy with sleep, her face peaceful. Alara stood in the doorway, a soft smile playing on her lips. Arav realized then that the 3 words Mira had spoken were more than comfort. They were an invitation, a reminder that love did not require perfection, only presence. In the gentle glow of the nightlight, surrounded by the quiet hum of a life slowly mending, Arav felt something he had not felt in years, a calm certainty that sometimes, the smallest voices carry the greatest truths, and sometimes, a single act of kindness is enough to bring even the burned back into the light.